So Anne, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Anne, and let's see. I guess
Hey, Ann, say
Anne.
something.
Hey, I'm here.
Okay, here we are. So Anne Peabody's multidisciplinary practice involves correlating human experience in the natural world. She uses various organic and recycled materials, including plants, wood, glass, and metal, to expand and evolve a body of landscape-based art that includes installation, performance, sculpture, drawing, and textiles. Her artwork is intentionally difficult to capture through photography. The artist's compositions are defined by the interplay of light and different materials, resulting in dynamic shifts in appearance that are influenced by the viewer's position and environment. And thank you so much. And I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great to be here. And I think this is going to be a very interesting follow-up to Frank's talk because I feel like we're trying to sort of accomplish the same thing, but from two very, very different starting points. Uh, First of all, I grew up in Kentucky. I wasn't allowed to watch television as a child, so I grew up with no screens whatsoever. Um, Pretty much focused on nature. For the past 24 years, I've lived in Brooklyn, New York, where I started graduate school in 2003. And since living in New York, most artists I know aim to create work that is really well captured on a phone screen. It enables them to see it, post it, buy it. It simplifies winning contests and grants. And that's really a big focus for them. And I thought about that. I don't even think I had a phone when I started graduate school and realized that teachers were having us see shows, and I was feeling like I had seen them without actually visiting them in person. I would see them online on my computer screen and feel like I had experienced the entire picture. Um, since coming to that realization, one of my goals as an artist has been to lure people away from their devices and encourage them to engage with places and people by creating works that can only be experienced in person. Um, as Rebecca said, I'm an environmentally focused artist, so I created a series of rules for myself that I pretty much try to adhere to, which is one, try to make people think about the natural environment and how it reacts to how we react to it. I try to make work out of 90% recycled and recyclable materials. I try to make work that is dependent on climate and weather conditions, and I aim to make work that noticeably changes as it ages, as we do. After several unsuccessful attempts at piquing interest in Kentucky landscapes using traditional painting methods, as Franz was talking about, I happened upon an article in an architectural trade magazine that was focused on the power of reflection. And this article assured that human vanity is so great that people would wait patiently 15 times longer for an elevator if the waiting area was mirrored than they would in an unreflective space. To test this theory and adhere to my imposed guidelines, I copied one of my landscape paintings onto silvered leaf and applied it to glass. I drew into the leaf with my fingers, and over time, the oils from my hands reacted with the metal and tarnished the silver, creating faint, shadowy images that reflected viewers into the landscape. You can go to the first slide. The article was correct. For better or worse, this piece was a big hit in New York, and the same artists and curators who poo-pooed all of my landscape paintings, claiming they were too beautiful and decorative to be taken seriously as modern art, all wanted to see themselves reflected in the mirror image from every angle and various lighting arrangements. So these two photographs, one is the piece in the gallery. It looks like a plain mirror, and then the one on the right are just different people looking at themselves reflected into the landscape drawing. As I said before, I aim to make work that's difficult to capture on film, and it's the images you sort of have to be there to understand them, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of a picture. You can go to the next slide. Later, this drawing was purchased by the owner of Christian Dior, who displayed it in his apartment. For the next few years, his guests' reactions led him to theorize that Dior patrons who saw themselves in beautiful clothes reflected in a similar opaque, ethereal setting would be enticed to buy fashion. He asked if I would mind if he moved this piece to a new store in Dubai to test his theory. A decade later, which is about now, my Kentucky-based silvered landscape drawings are permanent features on the walls of Dior flagships around the world. While vanity plays a huge part in the popularity of these works, every so often I do get contacted by a shopper from some foreign land who wants to know more about Kentucky and asks whether the lush, beautiful scenery is real or imagined. This is a concept shot that the Dior architects rendered for the first piece and how people would see themselves in it. I began, sort of as Franz said, this began to be sort of like I don't know, horse and pony trick. I don't know what you call it. Just I began to do more and more of these landscapes, but it didn't hold any meaning to me anymore. So the element of chance began slipping into my work, at first unexpectedly. Silver leaf is very fickle material and it tarnishes and is ruined by the slightest changes in the studio environment. So, and each of the drawings I make is drawn on the reverse side. They take about a month, and I can only view the finished product after I paint a sealant on the exposed silver and turn the plate glass over. So after dozens of horrific, terribly tarnished drawings developed, I decided to use its reactive nature to illustrate some of the environmental challenges I'd experienced outside my studio. To ensure the outcome of each work was as volatile as the images it represented, I incorporated new and different drawing instruments in a variety of studio climates. Okay, you can, the next slide, please. This drawing is the site of an Ohio River flood on River Road in Louisville. I drew into silver leaves with sand that I took from the spot once the water went down and the blood from my fingers from rubbing grit against the glass. I made this work for the 2011 Venice Biennale after a recent tsunami and Aqua Alta concurrently wreaked havoc on Japan and Venice. The wavy glass on which I drew caused light reflections on the gallery floors that resembled the rippling water flooding the street outside the gallery. Years later, Chinese artist and curator Ai Weiwei discovered this piece in a museum in Murano. He took his Venice Biennale press photos in front of it and sent them to me. Afterward, he curated my other mirrored glass drawings into art shows at the Hermitage Museum in Russia and the 2026 upcoming Biennale. Although he captured my drawings reasonably well in his photos, he was more interested in capturing himself and the Biennale curators using photography and reflection. You can go to the next slides. These are three renderings. The left is called Tennessee Woods, the middle is Sunspike, and the right is Black Waterfall. In all three of these, I drew favorite spots in the Smoky Mountains from my photograph of a 2016 hiking trip with family. These wild places no longer exist, as I photographed them before the most extensive wildfires in the US since 1947 destroyed the area a month after our trip. For these drawings, I allowed the oils from my fingers and the polluted air in Brooklyn to eat into the silver for an extra month before I sealed them, thus the blackness. Making these works was especially exhilarating and terrifying. The silver and glass were very costly for me, and I spent weeks drawing each of them before turning them over and hoping the elements would develop them into something. If I had kept them exposed too long, they would be pure black, and not long enough would be a drawing of nothing. I also experimented with reflection, chance, and the effects of air on metal in three-dimensional works. Sculptures and installations not only reflect with viewers, but they also allow them to insert themselves physically in the scene. You can switch the slide. This is called Wheel of Fortune, which many of you Louisvillians have probably seen. It hangs in 21C, and it's a two-story representation of the tornado that leveled most of Louisville in April 1974. After a series of health complications, I began thinking about loss, recovery, and what's valuable to me. I interviewed Louisville residents who had experienced the storm and carved images from their stories of loss and recovery. I carved elements from salvaged wood. A lot of it was saved in the sheds of Louisville area wood turners from trees felled in the tornado. The glass pieces were found or donated by neighbors. I silvered everything so that all of the carvings, from lost diamond rings to AAA batteries, would be of equal importance. And I mirrored the glass elements so that viewers could see themselves reflected in the twister, giving it a funhouse effect. The next slide, please. Wildfire. This piece was created from hand-cut and soldered copper that I drew veins in with a metal scribe. It reflects the story of the site in which it's installed. This is the original house at Wave Hill, an estate in the Bronx, New York, turned into a museum and botanical garden. It first burned to the ground when lightning struck some dry foliage near the home's fireplace. The home was completely rebuilt, and I made the charred and heat-colored leaves to suggest the fire that destroyed the original house, while the shiny copper suggests the new ivy outside the window. Next slide, please. Silk landscape. This is an experiment I did with reflective metals on silk. Sort of like photography, I made this 3 by 9 foot drawing by gluing dots of silver, white gold, and platinum leaf to the silk. Over time, the silver and white gold will tarnish. The silver will turn dark brown, then blue or black, and the white gold will tarnish to yellow, then orange. Platinum is a fine metal, so it can't be changed, and together, over months or years, depending on the weather, the image of a landscape will appear. Okay. You can go to the next slide. Focusing on chance and immersion. So I learned about the Bernheim Research Forest, an Arboretum artist residency in 1993 when my high school art teacher returned from a residency there with some of the most inspiring paintings I'd ever seen. He told me his time alone in a beautiful cabin near the forest had been essential to his artistic evolution. After the COVID lockdown, I wanted to return to Kentucky and nature. Remembering my teacher's time there, I applied for a residency at Bernheim and was awarded one in the summer of 2021. A few nights into my stay, I began reading a book in my cabin about the history of the forest and its founder, Isaac W. Bernheim. I was surprised to learn that in 1929, Mr. Bernheim bought much of the 16,000-acre park at a fraction of the cost because the trees had been felled in an acre a day to support the salt and iron mines in the area. I did more research and confirmed the land was devastated, similar to mountaintop removal and coal strip mines we can still see in Appalachia. Mr. Bernheim's foresight and the help of the Olmsted Brothers landscape design firm, as well as decades of work and patience, created the beautiful nature preserve I thought had been there all along. After learning that the land had been stripped at the rate of an acre a day, I realized neither I nor anyone I asked had the concept of the size of an acre. I didn't know how many steps it would take to walk across, how many trees or other plant and animal species could grow on it, how much oxygen it could produce, or how much rainwater it could contain in comparison to one of the large distribution centers or parking lots surrounded the boundaries of Bernheim. As commercial and housing developments threatened Bernheim and other wild spaces, I thought knowledge of this was more critical. Artists who participate in the residency at Bernheim are asked to leave a piece of artwork behind when their term ends. I met with visual arts curator Jenny Zeller and proposed a work of art that symbolized the resilience and regeneration of the land and paid homage to its founder. Titled Acre, it would be a planting of redbud trees that delineate an acre boundary, a reminder of the forest that was once devastated by industry at an acre a day. A native prairie garden underplanting would further enhance the space, providing changing seasonal texture, color, and habitat for hundreds of animal and insect species, while illustrating the salt licks and iron veins running beneath the soil. Last slide, please. I'm well known for creating landscapes using silver leaf on plate glass, silk, or wood that rely on reflection to provide color and allow viewers to enter the scenes. However, with this new acre project, I propose to create a physical artwork that viewers could walk into. I realized it was a long-term investment, but I calculated that nearly 4 million people would visit over the 10-year budgeted period. Through walking through the living artwork and reading the interpretive signage, the guests would understand the size of an acre by seeing it outlined and being able to walk through the space. They could learn the history of the forest, which many assume had always been there. They could recognize that something beautiful and beneficial could be created from any beginning with vision, patience, and hard work. They could learn about the salt and iron mining history of the area, and they could explore ecological changes and challenges we face as acres of land are destroyed for commercial expansion locally and globally. The slide on the right is the now planted acre lit up for a Bernheim event. I didn't foresee this interpretation of the work when I originally designed it, but it thrills me. And I look forward to witnessing many future iterations of the artwork, which will be brought by nature and people for decades. That's it. Thanks. Oh, I can't hear.
Oh, let's see. Do you hear me?
Yep.
All right, cool.
Mhm.
Thank you, Anne. That was wonderful.
Sure.
I
Thanks.
know about your reflection, starting from how your reflection pieces got started. That was quite cool. Quite funny.
It was actually sort of depressing, but also interesting once
Yeah.
I started seeing people's reactions. Hi,
Um,
Claire.
Hi, Anne. Good to see you.
so we're
You-
gonna open it up. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Didn't open
Oh
up.
no, we just said good to see each other.
Oh. Do you have any questions or anybody have a question? Throughout? Ken, you're looking at me.
Me. I don't know, what is your take on painting getting more in again?
Painting getting more in again.
I absolutely love painting. I actually met Claire after undergrad. She was the first person I hired with my own money. She taught me egg tempera. And do you remember that in her apartment back in the day?
Well, Rebecca reminded me, yes.
Yeah, I absolutely love painting. So yeah, I did, but I just felt like I couldn't make a connection with painting the way I could with reflection with people. So I connect with it. We had a professor in graduate school take us to the Metropolitan Museum, and we were to sit in front of our favorite painting for like 3 hours and time the amount of time that people looked at the painting, and the average time was something like 4 seconds. I mean, it was like such a depressing amount of time in comparison to the work that goes into a painting that I love it, but I wanted to figure out a way to engage with others in a way that painting just wasn't allowing me to do. I don't think it's dead. For me personally, I don't think it is. I think I think there's always room for painting.
It kind of makes me think of something that there's a thought I had when Frank was talking too, which is that when he's talking about when you're making a work of art, like how you're always thinking about the other people present.
Yeah.
And with your reflection, you very much are, because you know they'll be looking at it and you're engaging them as spectators of themselves observing. So like kind of turning it in to them, seeing themselves and seeing them. No.
Exactly. And I didn't have any idea how interested people are in themselves. Like it's shocking to me that how correct the article I read was. But
And also
yeah.
like something that I've just been and it's just been a part of stuff that I've been reading is how do you get people to linger? Like we've lost that idea, or not the ability, but we just don't linger. Things don't keep us engaged.
Mhm.
So some things I was thinking about, like when Frank was talking about making an artwork, making a game, the game has a time element that I think Charlie's probably going to expand on a little bit. The idea that it's you experience it over time, but as you're making an artwork that is that is simultaneous all at once. How do you get those activation points to get people to linger, to stay, so they don't walk away in that 4 seconds? And
Right.
it's a constant kind of, it's almost, if I say a game, it's a constant thing that I think of myself. And then when I put it out in the world, I wonder if it's working. Like, did they see moves? Is it drawing them through the work? And
I think, oh, go ahead. I think that's what really interested me in making the work out of materials that would tarnish over time, because people have to linger for years, maybe decades, to see the outcome, just like you would with your own garden or your child that's growing up. I mean, so it's been very interesting to me because collectors call me sometimes who bought work years ago. I remember there's a collector in Louisville, Al Shands, who since died, who called me and said, I'm going to die soon. Is this going to tarnish before I die? And I'm just, keep watching, buddy. I don't know, So it's interesting to me to be able to do that, I guess in an old fashioned way. I guess in an old timey way.
oh, it's beautiful. Beautiful work. Yeah, I got a few.
Question, but it's something I think is interesting. When Brian was talking, I was thinking about beauty and myth, the myth of, what we think of in our minds. And the other day I was at 21C with a visitor and who used to live in Louisville, and he said, we were looking at your piece, and he said, oh, well, I heard that everything in this sculpture is from her house. Maybe, but that would be a lot. But he was convinced, and he had heard that from someone he knew. And I just think it's interesting that the beauty and the myth and sort of all working together. And I don't know. I just thought it was.
Yeah, I carved all of the wood carvings in my house. Maybe that's what he heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Valerie.
Hi, Dan. Sorry I didn't go to your opening at Susan's, but I did go over the other day. And I love the shoes, and I just find myself coming back and thinking about that, often about place. And your work is really about place. And what are you gonna go on with that? Because it really did make me stop and linger.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think for me, all of my work has to do with specific sites. So it's very difficult for me to sort of just think up the next thing. I have to make and then go out and experience things for a while and let things happen before I have anything. I mean, the thing with the shoes came up when 4,000 migrants suddenly appeared next door to me, and they were issued those flip-flops that I had on the floor, and then they started getting shoes from garbage, different things, and creating these huge shoe sale areas for each other so that they could get into tennis shoes or Oxfords and things by wintertime. And just thinking about them and sort of their life path and, putting myself in their shoes and vice versa. And what is the value, what is the value of things? That comes up in a lot of my work. I think not taking things for granted comes up in a lot of my work. But yeah, I don't know yet what I'll do next.